Hello there. I heard you have had some trouble sleeping, and I've also heard that you are quite the fan of modern history. So allow me to present a more recent tale in this recent galaxy. It is about it is the it is the 2030s, and the Xeno Galaxy has just formed after, of course, the new galaxy and the old galaxy. The Xeno Galaxy is thriving as new countries and factions begin to take control of lands inside of the once empty galaxy. One of one of these factions, however, had already existed much before then. That faction being Brusha, or the Tsardom of Brusha. Brusha had formed in 2022 as part of a initiative to bring diasporoids from Ukraine, Russia, Belarus, and some other immigrants from Poland and other Eastern European countries to form a new country in the south of the new galaxy in 2022 after the Russian invasion of Ukraine that year. The ethnic Russians were the majority of these people that made the new country, and had promised a democratic rival government to the Russian Federation on Earth in the south of the new galaxy. However, these ethnic Russians would vote out the majority of the council that had been called up to decide the fate of this new territory that it controlled, and that led to the creation of the Tsardom of Russia, which had betrayed the original ideas of a more parliamentary democracy that was once presumed to have been the new government of this country. Russia would lay claims to large chunks of the new galaxy, mostly extent, which would extend all the way up to modern day Okashiri. This decision was controversial, even inside Russia itself, as minorities, such as the Ukrainians, the Belarusians, the Poles, the Czechs, the Slovaks, the Hungarians, the Romanians, the Georgians, the Estonians, Latvians, and so on and so on, took to the streets wanting a smaller, equaler state. And many believe that this new government was seeming to resemble the Russian Federation and its ambitions of having a new Russian empire on Earth. However, the Prussian Tsardom would disperse these protests quite quickly and would continue their political ambitions of expanding their territory. These took political actions as well as economic ones, but on a few occasions did see direct violence being used. Russia is well known for waging war against its eastern neighbor, the Canali People's Republic, and its ally of Dongha, but has also gotten itself into conflict with the Hindus to the north of their border and the Dukyebans to the west of the border. But when the Xeno Galaxy had formed, Russia looked towards the south, and Russia had decided that this would be the new plot of expansion where they could perhaps one day build the economy and get the resources plentiful enough to potentially fulfill their irredentist claims. Russian expeditionary forces would establish a puppet state in the new would establish a puppet state in the Xeno Galaxy, and they would proclaim the government of Kronstault, and they would proclaim the new government of Kronstault as a product directly from the Tsardom of Brusha. So Brusha is essentially the overseer of this country, and they would do this in the capital of Romskenstok, and they would do so in the new capital of Romskenstok. Romskenstok, or Kronstadt had actually been a rather promising country originally. It allowed the Russian economy to expand its business endeavors and become more self-reliant rather than the heavy trade dependency it had at the time with the Lime Republic, or as we now know as Evergreen. And the GDP, the PPP, and other factors such as HDI began to see considerable rises inside of Russia, which which gave the people of Brusha a new hope and a new sense of national pride, which was exactly what the government had wanted. And these successes would see Brusha, and these successes would essentially give Brusha the green light to continue expansion into the Xeno Galaxy, which had, again, still largely been unclaimed. In 2032, the Treaty of Tokyo had finally ceased to exist as a valid treaty. It originally had been set up by the Tent Space to end the production of nuclear arms, which everyone reluctantly had signed after the various galactic wars that had broken out this time. And multiple countries had decided to forge a new peace treaty, known as the Treaty of Louisburg, which was essentially an extended version of the Treaty of Tokyo that would uh, that would also ban the further production of nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, and biochemical weapons. Russia, however, would not sign this treaty, as Russia had a new nuclear program at the time, wanting to hopefully acquire nuclear weaponry, and had also been investing heavily into nuclear power. This plane had been in the research for years at this point, most notably with the Kronstault reactor, which had powered up about 40% of the entire region's power that it was based in, along with the plant of Vladistong, which had essentially dominated the power industry in the north of the country. These reactors had seen These reactors served the Russian nation rather well. They provided a cheap source of power and created thousands of new jobs in the area. And the continuously expanding nuclear program was seemed to become a characteristic of Russia in the same way that strawberries are Automania's characteristic. However, with this newfound confidence, Russia had decided to speed up its nuclear weapons development program, and within what is expected to be anywhere from 5 to 9 months of development time, Russia had developed its very own entirely new nuclear weapon and launcher. This nuclear weapon was about this nuclear weapon was about 150. This nuclear weapon, for scale, was about this nuclear weapon was about 85,000 pounds, which, to give an idea, is about 20,000 pounds heavier than the Tsar Bomba, which was designed by the Soviet Union in 1961 and was the largest nuclear weapon ever designed in history. The Russians were eager to see this new nuclear weapon be put into action and begin a live state televised broadcast on all channels across Russia in a recently founded territory to the south of Romskenstok. This nuclear launch occurred just 2 weeks after the Treaty of Tokyo had ended and came as a shock to most around them. The count began 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and the bomb had blasted off. The fires had emerged from the bottom of the missile. However, instead of ascending, as most nuclear bombs are supposed to, it rather jumped, leaned over, and fell to the surface. And in combination with the nuclear reactor that it was stationed next to in the area, had created a massive meltdown, which had infected a zone extending hundreds of miles and covering hundreds of thousands of square kilometers inside of it. Russia was sanctioned. Now, with this nuclear blast, one would expect people to be quite mad, which they were, with the United Organization of Republics, Monarchies, and Constitutions implementing economic sanctions onto Russia, and also forcing the Russian government's hand to pay for all the damage caused by the accident, having to supply the humanitarian missions, and to sign the newly created Treaty of Louisburg. And to top it off, the Canali People's Republic had launched a new offensive into their ally, the Arkansas Republic, which essentially caused Russia to leave the war entirely. One has to ask, simply, what the hell were they thinking? That concludes our short but hopefully very relaxing ASMR video. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.